I've got a friend who's going to come in. Everybody's talking about artificial intelligence, so I just am going to have someone share a little bit of insight with some leading questions.
I'm Brianna. I'm going to guide you through some of the insight that you are going to share today with the folks at Fiera Infrastructure today around future trends. Is that okay?
By all means. I think that everybody's thinking about, what is coming next? What do we need to do about it?
So let's start here. I'm an AI avatar, or let's just say I'm a robot, generated by a sophisticated artificial intelligence technology system. It seems kind of appropriate, since I understand you want to start out talking about the future with another famous robot, Rosie, from the Jetsons. And somehow, in an event where you were speaking with a room full of astronauts in an event for NASA. Tell me about it.
Yeah, NASA actually had me in twice. And you have to understand the context of this. This is back when, there were only the Russians, the Chinese, and the Americans were in the space industry, and they could not conceive of a world in which today there's 500 plus companies in the global space industry. And I was thinking, how do I get across to them the speed of change, the fact that the future is coming at us faster than ever before? So what I thought I would do to, as a bit of an icebreaker, and I'll use this with you, is I'm going to talk about the Jetsons. I'm going to talk about this TV show from 1962 that was set in the year 2062. The thing about the Jetsons, and what I emphasize to NASA, and I think what everybody on this call needs to understand, is if you look at that show, everything that was predicted for being 50 years from now is actually here today. You can go through the show and find all these fascinating signs. Elroy's got a drone. He's in the living room. He's actually flying a drone around the room. There's flat screen TVs, LED TVs, these devices that we have throughout our homes today. There's iPads, there's Android devices. We had a group of futurists in 1962 predicting the future 100 years away. And all this stuff arrived a lot earlier. Apple Watches, just like the Apple Watch I've got on my wrist here today, Amazon Echo, Google Home devices, these smart speakers, which are in our home. There's actually an episode where Jane has Snapchat. This is quite a bit of fun. Amazon Prime, virtual shopping, that was all part of the show. It's fun to think about the future this way. And I actually, when I watched the episode about the Jetsons and the Flintstones in the context of the ESG legislative discussion that is out there, it's sort of like, that predicted the state of politics in some locations in the year 2023. They actually predicted COVID, the home office, online classes, telemedicine, video calls. Here's the point of this type of fun look at the future. We think the future is far away, but we have to appreciate that we're truly living in what I call the era of acceleration. This period of time in which trends are accelerating, they're picking up speed. They're coming at us with greater intensity. They're coming at us all at once. And if there's one word that I hear from people about the future today, it's the fact that they feel absolutely overwhelmed by the rate of change. And if we're thinking about the future of infrastructure, we've got to realize we're going to see a lot of change underway in the years to come because we're living through that period of change right now.
So your key point for a room full of astronauts, and something you want to emphasize to the folks in this Fiera infrastructure meeting today, is that we are all living in this world of hyperspeed change. What's the impact of the era of acceleration? You seem to indicate that it leads to some big changes in almost every single industry. Tell us about that.
Yeah, when I walk out on stage, I like to encourage people to think, imagine it's the year 2030, imagine it's 2035, imagine we're looking back at today, 2023, and we're realizing how much our world changed in just 10 years. So think about the automotive industry. Think about, it's the year 2035. We're all in vehicles which are electric vehicles. They're in essence big iPads with big batteries. And the era of the gasoline engine, the era of the diesel engine, it literally disappeared. And we had to build a whole bunch of infrastructure to support this massive transformation. Imagine where we're going to be in the future. Think about the world of farming. Think about the world of agriculture. Not a lot to do with infrastructure, but it's another example of good change. Right now we farm when the sun is up. One day in the future, we're going to look back and we're going to remember how quaint a concept that was, because we are farming 24 hours a day. We're no longer restricted to farming when the sun is up, because autonomous vehicle technology, virtualization, advanced robotics means that we can now farm 24 hours a day. We're going to think about the world of retail, and we'll remember, back in the day, we used to go out and get a lot of the stuff we need And then all the stuff came to us with a lot of sophisticated last mile delivery technology, drone technology, and a lot of other advanced concepts. We'll look back at the world of healthcare and we'll remember, it's a world in which we used to fix people after they were sick. But now we're in a world in which we know, because of advanced genomics and virtualization of healthcare, the fact that patients are always plugged in with blood pressure cuffs and real-time blood glucose monitoring, and the virtualization of healthcare. We know increasingly what people are likely to become sick with, and we fix them before they're sick. An absolutely massive change where the entirety of healthcare has literally turned upside down. We'll look at the world of manufacturing, and we'll remember we were in a world of mass production where we would produce millions of products that were all the same, and then 3D printing had arrived, advanced robotics, and we were in a world of mass customization where increasingly we were able to mass produce products for one person, and with 24-hour delivery logistics systems around the world, get that to any person on the planet. We'll look at the world of vehicles and realize that big batteries on wheels supported by renewables. We realize that the era of carbon is essentially over because there's so much momentum going on with wind and solar and microgrids and battery storage technology that what we witnessed was a massive transformation of the entirety of the global energy grid with the arrival of distributed energy. Shifting from a world where we've got one big utility distributing energy to millions of homes and hundreds of thousands of commercial industrial facilities to a two-way system where there's a lot of inputs of energy and a lot of sophisticated big data AI-driven analytics that are balancing this massive two-way grid. We're in a situation in which I try to encourage people to imagine concepts that today seem inconceivable. Imagine the impossible, make it possible, and that's the reality of our future. One thing I say to a lot of folks is we're now in this situation in which companies that do not yet exist will build products not yet conceived, using materials not yet invented, with methodologies not yet in existence. That's the reality of our future, and that's the context in which we need to think about the future of infrastructure.
When I sent my data scraper to your site to feed some information to ChatGPT, I noticed that you've got a whole page dedicated to what you call the drivers of disruption.
Yeah, it's a section where I talk about 24 key trends which are really behind a lot of the change that is occurring. And I think it's important to understand this because this is really the essence for how our entire future world of infrastructure is changing. Think about what is happening.
It seems you like to get people thinking about those disruptive trends. Let's dive into that before you get into some specifics about the future of infrastructure. What do folks need to know about the disruptive trends that are defining the future of every industry?
They need to realize that our future is changing faster than we think. Think about what I'm doing here today as I speak to you, coming from a virtual broadcast studio, and I'm going to talk to you about the drivers of disruption. This is where I am in a big green screen room with a whole bunch of gear and a whole bunch of cameras and a whole bunch of lights. Someone said that, to do what I'm doing here today 10 years ago would probably have cost close to $1 million. And now the impact of what is happening is so profound. The impact on telecom infrastructure going forward in this complex world is fascinating. Here's what's going on. Multiple trends are coming together all at once. This is the root of disruption. You think about what is happening with the emergence of virtualization. You think about what is happening with the sudden arrival of artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, 3D printing, what is going on with advanced robotics in manufacturing. You think about what is happening in a world with so much connectivity changing everything. And the real key trend that is unfolding here is every single company is becoming a software company. Every single industry is becoming a technology-based industry. And what that does is it drives forward the rate of change. Think about automotive. Think about what is happening with the energy sector. Think about what happens when cars become big batteries on wheels, essentially with an iPad at the heart of their control system. What is happening here is automotive and transportation is becoming a technology industry, a software industry, and that speeds up the rate of change. The same thing is occurring in healthcare with the virtualization of healthcare, the arrival of technology. Innovation in healthcare now occurs at a speed which is unlike anything we've seen before. The arrival of 24-hour farming driven by technology, no longer restricted to farming when the sun is up, that changes everything. Part of what is happening here is what we call hyperconnectivity. When everything around us connects, it redefines the very nature of the product. A car is no longer just a car. It's a hyperconnected data-gathering machine on wheels. And think about what this leads to in the world of a disruptive insurance, where we can now underwrite an insurance policy based upon real-time driving behavior, not upon what you've done in the past. I've spent time with organizations that realize they're not selling a widget anymore. They're selling some weird sort of hyper-connected, intelligent AI thing. That changes everything. What happens as these trends unfold is Moore's law drives the speed of change. Moore's law, you know, is the law that the processing power of a computer chip doubles every 16 months, 18 months, and the cost cuts in half. That speed of change is now coming to every single industry and is driving forward the acceleration of infrastructure from so many different perspectives. One of my books was called The Future Belongs to Those Who Are Fast, and we live in this era of acceleration where everything is changing faster than ever before. And what happens here is products go out of date faster, infrastructure goes out of date faster, everything changes faster because we get the same rates of iPhone obsolescence appearing in every single industry. Part of what is happening as well is science itself is accelerating. Look, I delight in going on stage and explaining we're in a world, we've got Fitbits for cows. We actually have Fitbits for cows, and batteries are at the heart of that magical technology. Batteries are at the heart of drone technology, which are being used for building inspection throughout the infrastructure industry. And you think about what is happening with batteries. There is so much acceleration of the science of batteries that what we thought was impossible is increasingly becoming possible. You know, I shared on stage a number of years ago, you remember that scene from The Graduate where the young Dustin Hoffman is talking to the older fellow and he's saying, I've got one word for you about the future, plastics. I've got one word for you about the future, batteries. The acceleration of science doesn't just have to do with battery science technology, but with everything. The arrival of new materials, advanced methodologies, the arrival of new concepts with science by which we can construct new facilities such as 3D printing in concrete. Part of what is happening with these disruptive trends is distributed technologies define our future. This is what's happening in the world of energy, where we used to have one big energy grid which would distribute energy to millions of homes and hundreds of thousands of industrial and commercial facilities. That's now becoming a big distributed energy grid with millions of inputs of renewables, wind, solar, with a lot of batteries. The grid is no longer one big monolith infrastructure. It's a massive distributed infrastructure. And that is leading to the birth of all kinds of new industries in this world of microgrid energy. You think about all these trends, one of the most fascinating things is virtualization is maturing. You look at kids playing Farmville today, people think they're wasting time in video games. If you think about it, what's really occurring, they're spending time with a next generation virtualization infrastructure. And part of what happens here is business models redefine and realign through all this. This is why when we talk about business model disruption, we talk about disruption, we're talking about the reality, the old ways of doing business, the old concepts, the old drivers that defined our future no longer apply. We have to think differently, do differently, act differently, and think in new and different ways. And that's why I like to point out that we're now in this situation in which really, if you think about where we're going forward in the future, companies that do not yet exist will build products not yet conceived using materials not yet invented with methodologies not yet in existence. That's our future. And it's in that type of thinking that the future of infrastructure can be found.
So what happens with infrastructure in the future? You've got some big picture views as to how these disruptive trends are changing it, shaping it, determining how it evolves. Take us through some of that, but with a specific view to energy, telecom, and social infrastructure.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time with a lot of organizations around the world speaking about the future of infrastructure. And here's what I like to get across. If you think about what is happening, it's becoming smart, right? It's becoming part of this world of smart AI-driven technology. It's becoming hyper-connected, where a lot of Internet of Things, sensor technology, and other stuff becomes a part of what it is, and it allows us to monitor it, manage it, assess it. assess its performance. It's becoming connected. It's becoming distributed. We can't emphasize enough how much, for example, the energy grid is changing. It is very much being developed with new methodologies and new concepts and new ideas. I spoke at the American Concrete Association and was speaking about the acceleration of the ability to 3D print in concrete. And that seemed like a crazy idea a few years ago as a leading edge methodology, but it is suddenly becoming very, very real. And it involves a lot of new materials. One of the most unappreciated aspects of what is occurring with the future is the acceleration of new material science. There's so much happening here, and so much of that is flowing into what we are doing with advanced concepts with infrastructure. And when you take all these things together, what is really emerging here is the future of infrastructure is being determined, like so many other industries, by those with big, bold ideas. And that is resulting in massive new opportunities. It really goes to the heart of what I do as a futurist. I don't spend my time to point out where really things are disappearing, but where the opportunities are emerging. So I've been on stage talking about things like, as I said, 3D printing in concrete, the arrival of solar generating windows, where we've actually got solar generating glass. I've been talking a lot of industrial, commercial, manufacturing conferences about what is happening with in-facility microgrid battery storage generation technology. This is a massive new exploding emerging industry. Accelerated robotics. I just spoke at a conference in Iowa, social housing conference in Iowa, where we were talking about the fact of what is emerging with these new methodologies in the construction sector is allowing us to create new social housing at a lower cost using advanced methodologies that wasn't previously possible with a lot of new advanced building materials and concepts of disruptive construction that involve increasingly, prefab concepts to do things in new and different ways. Look, there's so much going on out there, and there's an intense level of interest. I just had an article published in Oil and Gas News, which is one of the largest energy publications in the Middle East. And the article is all about what is happening with what I call this era of connected, intelligent energy, this world of microgrid and solar and wind and batteries and renewables. And I know I've emphasized that a few times, but that is such a massive, massive opportunity. Look, it's been said that of the $11.5 trillion going into energy investment by the year 2050, 85% of that is going to go into wind and solar, renewables and grid and smart. Let's spin over to social infrastructure. What is happening? It's fascinating to think about what is emerging. Think about healthcare, for example. What we are witnessing is the virtualization of the hospital. Pre-COVID, what existed was a lot of distributed technology by which patients could be managed and monitored from afar. COVID, the global pandemic, sent us through this huge behavioral change where we became much more open to the concept of virtualized healthcare, not having to visit our doctor, perhaps building seniors' care facilities that allow a senior to live longer in their home, to be monitored by a healthcare system of a lot of advanced technology. I'm dealing with healthcare institutions which are talking about the architecture of the hospital of the future of the 21st century is virtualized, where we're not creating hospital beds inside a hospital. We are creating those hospital beds inside someone's home through virtualized technologies. If we think about social infrastructure and we think about these new methodologies, what we can do for the creation of homes to support the increasing number of people who cannot afford to have homes. The new methodologies, new material science is so exciting. It is simply staggering. Part of what is happening with social infrastructure is rapid urbanization. I mean, we are headed to a world of 36 massive megacities. And part of what is happening there is we're realizing as we build these megacities, we've got to come up with new, big, bold solutions to solve some of the biggest challenges that exist. So for example, in my 23 Trends for 2023 series, which I just ran, and a big future series, I'm revisiting the concept of vertical farming, because what we are realizing as we go to this world of megacities, there's so much opportunity of what we can do once we begin to grow the food inside cities in massive skyscrapers used for the production of food. If I think about the future of social infrastructure, there's just so much opportunity there. It's truly amazing. And then there's telecom. I mean, look where I am at this moment in time in this virtual broadcast studio. I mean, we're in this world in which everybody is getting their own television station. Everybody is becoming an information producer. We're all doing these virtual calls. We've adapted and we've evolved as a society, being much more open to video calls via Zoom and all these other things. And what this is doing is placing an unprecedented demand on the existing telecom infrastructure is placed. Look, I wrote a book late 1999. I wrote 34 books about the internet, and one of them was called Light Bulbs to Yotabits, How to Understand and Profit from the Internet of the Future. And the word yotabit, what's a yotabit? It's the biggest unit of measure. We've got a megabit, we've got a gigabit, we've got a terabit. Well, guess what the biggest one is? It's yotabit. I went out and bought the domain name. And what it leads us to is this world of absolutely massive bandwidth use. And that's what we've got to scale up with telecom. And so what we were seeing is a lot of innovative ideas, low Earth orbit satellites and, fatter, big undersea pipes, and a lot of investment going to support the increasing video demand being placed on the network. And then we get things like the Internet of Things and the smart factory of the future and the connected intelligent home. I've got a 28 and 29-year-old son who have more sensors in their homes doing more things. All of this is leading to unprecedented demand. And so we're seeing, beginning to see the tip of the iceberg with 5G and the emergence of just a lot of new concepts. Again, open up your mind to where we might find ourselves in the future with a lot of fascinating technologies. We truly live in a fascinating period of time. And this is where I spend my time with organizations worldwide, going in and trying to open up their minds to the possibilities that exist. And when I do that, I'm seeing a lot of fascinating trends, the numbers which are showing the pathway to our future. Look, batteries, the cost of batteries has declined by 97% in the last 3 decades. You look at the numbers of what is occurring where renewables has become much cheaper than any other form of electrical production. You look at how quickly we achieved grid parity, and that's where we can generate a unit of energy at a lower cost via a non-carbon resource than via carbon. We hit that faster than we expected. You look at what is happening with the acceleration of a solar generating window material, and we're soon going to be building skyscrapers in which the windows are actually energy sources generating energy. You look at 3D printing, and we can now, create a facility like we did in Dubai, 17 days to print an office building that's 20 feet high, 120 feet long, and it was overseen by a single engineer. These are the types of trends that get me excited about the future. Digital twin technology that fundamentally change what we can do in a construction process and the next generation sort of Google Glass, Apple, metaverse technology, which changes how we conceptualize the world around us. So much going on, so much opportunity, and then we're going to layer on top of it the impact of artificial intelligence.
How about the impact of AI on infrastructure? Everyone is talking about AI and people seem overwhelmed. Since I'm generated by an artificial intelligence system, I obviously have a pretty big interest in this. What happens now?
Yeah, you're actually doing that, pretty well. Think about that. I'm doing a presentation from a virtual broadcast studio, and I've got an AI-generated avatar which is asking me questions. I mean, we live in the era of magic. I can tell you, as a futurist, the number of inquiries coming in right now for talks around AI, it's simply staggering because people are absolutely overwhelmed by what is going on. And I think you have to understand the context of what is happening. What has happened here is the sudden recent explosion in AI research has all of a sudden come to the forefront. And we are now living in unprecedented times. You're aware of what is happening. You are feeling similarly overwhelmed by what is happening. And what I'm doing is I'm working to provide strategic clarity to organizations. This is not about ChatGPT. This is not about image generation. This is about what does this do for my business organization in terms of strategy, in terms of opportunity, in terms of the promise and peril. And I think part of what is happening with AI right now is FOMO, this fear of missing out. Organizations rushing to do something with it because they're chasing the latest, greatest, shiny new toy. No doubt, when it comes to infrastructure, if we go back to those premises that it's becoming intelligent, it's becoming connected, it's becoming smart, it's becoming monitorable, it's becoming accelerated, it's evolving faster. AI is simply going to move those trends forward even faster. But we also know that AI takes us into this world of unprecedented risk. Last November, I was invited over by Zurich Insurance to keynote their Global Risk Management Summit. And I had 500 risk managers for global Fortune 500 organizations from around the world in the room. And part of what I talked to them about with AI was, look, we're now in a situation in which every new technology that emerges is now, it's almost like it's now used ultimately for a nefarious purpose, accelerating societal risk. And what I also said to them is that we're now in this situation in which new technologies are coming at us so much faster that we barely know how to manage the risk it represents. And I think you need to put the context of the future of infrastructure under that umbrella to understand what it means.
I noticed a great phrase on your website. Some people see the future and see a threat. Innovators see the same future and see opportunity. I would imagine that some folks attending today might be in the former camp, not the latter, and in particular might be thinking about the idea of stranded assets. But you have a massive global client list with clients like Macquarie, Black and Veatch, Dominion Energy, PG and E, the World Bank. How do you respond? What have you seen?
You have to understand what I do is I get to spend time with a lot of CEOs and a lot of global organizations, and they're telling me what they're doing and what they're seeing and what they need to do to move their teams forward. And the issue of stranded assets is a really good question. And I can share with you some of the things I've seen. Look, I was at an energy conference in Houston. The CEO of one of the world's largest energy companies was on the stage before me. And what he said to everybody in the room was, look, oil is over, carbon is over, it's done. It's not because we're running out of carbon and oil and that gas, and we've gotten really good at getting it out of the ground with shale and all these other alternative methodologies. No, oil is over because we do have so much momentum with renewables and grid and energy and batteries. So I think part of the message I'm seeing on stranded assets is there are those in the infrastructure world who recognize that things are shifting, and they're recognizing they've got to pick up the speed at which they shift with it. I was with Dominion Energy, which is one of the largest energy utilities in the US East Coast, serving millions and millions of customers. Board of directors meeting, and someone in the board meeting said, well, maybe we should be in the business of electrified roads. Maybe we as an energy utility should disrupt ourselves before we are disrupted. I mean, I'm seeing those kind of encouraging signs where they realize that perhaps there's a stranded asset with the old infrastructure that is in place, and that what they've got to do is they've got to pick up the pace in terms of moving into this next future. I've seen organizations, Black and Veatch, who are talking, how do we turn our construction methodology upside down? And that directly leads into what we might be able to do with social housing. I've seen utilities, who have admitted we're just insurance companies now, providing energy when wind and solar and renewable doesn't provide, the certainty because of the variability of production. So we can kick in with our nat gas, nuclear, and other options. I've seen organizations talk about, who's going to build that sophisticated microgrid infrastructure in the future. Look, I was with the CEO of PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric, the largest utility out in the East Coast. And what he wanted to get across to his team was, look, we could be MP3, just like we used to share music in the Napster years. You've got a little bit of wind, I've got a little bit of solar, you've got a little bit of, microgrid. Let's share our energy and create our own little microgrid. I think the issue of stranded assets, I'm seeing a lot of encouraging signs. Everybody knows where we're going and what we need to do to align to the reality of what comes next. Because the reality is this is not your grandfather's infrastructure anymore. It's smart, it's connected, it's wired, it's intelligent, it's AI driven, and boy, it's moving fast. So I gotta say, thanks to the folks from FAIRA Infrastructure for inviting me in today. I'm actually a professional chartered accountant by background who became a futurist. So I've spent time at a lot of AGMs over the years, and I'm fascinated to see that you're taking the step to encourage others to think big and bold about where you're going with the future. Thank you for your time. Futurist Jim Carroll.
Great, thank you, Jim. We did have one question from the audience. What early indicators should we look out for that would give us an idea that a once unproven technology, one of the big, bold ideas you referred to, is about to become widely adopted?
My answer to that would be when a lot of people are saying that's the dumbest thing I ever heard. I think As soon as people are saying that about something, it's the dumbest idea you ever heard, you can probably presume it's going to be something real. I think a lot of people have future blinders on, future filters on that prevent them from seeing opportunity. And when I look back at my track record of 30, 35 years, I mean, I've predicted a lot of stuff. And I know along the way, a lot of people said to me, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard.
Well, thank you, Jim. We appreciate you spending time with us today and speak to us and our investors about the future of infrastructure investing.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jim. We're now going to pass it over to Brooks and Chris Eastgate, who will give a presentation on Cactus Energy.
Meet Jim Carroll, a global futurist advising leading global organizations on the trends that matter. Many of the world's most prestigious organizations have invited him to share his insight with their leadership teams. An expert on innovation, recognized for his unique approach to accelerating new ideas. A creativity champion, even Disney booked him for his insight into creativity. He has a reputation for customized insight. No two presentations are ever the same. With vast industry experience, he will help you understand the deep issues affecting your future. He's a virtual virtuoso for those organizations that are focused on fast knowledge delivery. And he has a sustained in-person, on-stage track record, having appeared at numerous significant global events. His global recognition means that he is represented and booked by many of the leading speakers' bureaus worldwide. He has a powerful stage presence, and he has a client-centric focus. It's your event, and he will work to customize to your requirements. He covers a vast range of disruptive topics, keeping his research engine tuned to today's most important trends. Learn more. Visit his site at jimcarroll.com. Contact him today. Accelerate your future. Do it now.